Derek Armstrong, and I'm a director at the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. The mandate of OSIF is to help diversify Calgary's economy and build resilience here in Calgary. It was capitalized in 2018 with $100 million from City Council, and about $85 million of that has been committed to date. At OSIF, we're all about, finding, fueling, and fostering. So, we're really skilled at finding the top opportunities out there for diversifying our economy. And of course, we fuel it with, combustible capital to help spur these new areas of the economy. And then, of course, we foster these opportunities by being a partner in this ecosystem and with our recipients and helping them succeed. We've invested that $85 million into lots of different organizations here in Calgary. So Life Science Innovation Hub, Plug and Play, Thrive, world-class accelerators, companies like Adabotics and other organizations like Movement 51, Avatar Innovations, CDL Rockies, and the list goes on and on. OSIF has delivered really strong results, so a 10x return on that investment in terms of economic activity and jobs. And as we all know, Calgary is now one of the fastest growing ecosystems, not only in Canada, but in the world. So, I think OSIF and other organizations that are providing support to this ecosystem are clearly doing something right. And we're just looking to keep that momentum going. So, I'm really excited to be here today with some panelists. I see Richard has found his way in as well from NRC IRAP. Get that camera on, Richard, and let's get ready to go. But, instead of me reading bios, let's get started with just a round of intros. So not kind of getting into the details of what you do and what you offer, but kind of the bio. So how about we kick it off with Curtis?
Yeah, happy to do so, Derek. Thanks for that, and thanks for your contributions here, helping out. Great to be a part of Scale Up Week first and foremost. So Simon and the team and all the work that they've done. I work for a local firm here in Calgary called Copoint, used to be TSGI. We have been SR&ED tax credit specialists for just nearing in on 30 years. So really since the beginning of folks doing the program in a meaningful way, the business here has been doing it, supporting innovative companies, developing technology. So I'm happy to be here. I have always done a great job surrounding myself with folks smarter than I, and today is no different. I'll maybe a special thank you, Ferdinand, for joining us. Ferdinand's I'll say the word friend, someone I've gotten to know recently, and just wonderful to have you here talking about the realities of being in the weeds of some of the programming. So I will pass off to you, Ferdinand. Let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be on this panel and speak with you guys about something that's extremely important to us, which is SR&ED and other grant and funding opportunities. So my name is Ferdinand Hingerl. I'm the CTO of a Calgary-based company called Ambient. Just to give you a little bit of one-liner what we actually are. So Ambient helps upstream oil and gas teams improve production using an AI-powered platform that enables optimization of every well, every day, essentially. Our vision is to accelerate the energies industry progress towards a more sustainable future using AI. We have all sorts of different scopes of value proposition here. But yeah, let's not go too deep into this one. Today we want to talk IRAP and other items. So IRAP has been an important part of our growth and de-risking strategy for innovation R&D. So I hope I can shed some light from our perspective, on the consumer perspective, basically, on how we work with those institutions and how we make things work.
Great, thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
And how about, thank you so much, Richard. You found your way in.
Well, good morning, or actually, I guess it's good afternoon, everybody. I'm saying with my fingers crossed that my struggles with my IT infrastructure are over. It just took a couple flicks of the wrist back and forth over the camera, but here I am. But yes, Richard Mann with the Industrial Research Assistance Program. I've been with IRAP for about 5 years. Prior to that, if I go way back when, I was actually an engineer with Nortel Networks, back when Nortel Networks was a thing. There I learned to do research and development, business development, product management, and then worked in about 60 countries around the world, spent some time in the People's Republic of China. Actually became a venture capitalist when I came back to Canada and spent some time working with seed stage companies in Western Canada. Went from there to IRAP, and along the way, I've started a few startups, advised a few startups. I teach a bit of new venture finance up at the U of C. So I don't know, Derek, if that covers it, but that's kind of where I'd like to start anyway.
That's great. That's great. I was just asking for bios, so saves me reading them out loud in a pretty plain fashion there. So let's dive right into it. So I'm going to throw it right back over to Curtis. Can you explain, give the elevator pitch about what is SR&ED? Everyone says it's SR&ED, but it's SR&ED. What is that?
That's right. Yeah. And it doesn't matter where I am. If I say shred, they go, what? If I say SR&ED, they say shred. So it won't matter. Yeah, and I'm really excited. I'll always ask Ferdinand to correct me when from the downstream the company's receiving versus my view on it. At the highest level, as you say, Derek, the scientific research experimental development, or affectionately referred to as the SR&ED program in Canada. It's the largest government incentive, just over $4 billion of returns, tax credits, and cash last year in how they track it. So supporting companies in Canada, spending money, advancing, developing new technologies, or advancing fields of science across Canada with either a cash return for some businesses or a traditional tax credit, depending on the structures. So a great program that's been around well over close to 40 years in the modern version of it here in Canada, helping companies in all verticals, all sectors advance and solve knowledge gaps in technology and science.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for that short and sweet answer, which is great at a high level.
That's the idea. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks so much. Before I turn it over to Ferdinand to talk about how he has accessed SR&ED, let's talk about NRC IRAP and how what you offer there. Focused on the funding side of things, Richard. I think that's what most people are most interested in. I know NRC IRAP is a large organization. I used to work for Prairies Economic Development Canada myself, a regional economic development agency. And, we have so many different roles and supports as a big federal government department, and NRC IRAP I know is no different. But yeah, if you can kind of give a rundown of, what I think companies are most interested is the funding side of things. But I know NRC IRAP does a lot of different things.
Sure. Well, yeah, I'm happy to talk about the funding. I hope we get a chance to circle back around to it, because I think there's a lot more to funding here in terms of how we help our companies with their chances of success. So IRAP as a program has actually been around for over 75 years. We started out actually about the time of the ending of the Second World War, when the government of Canada realized that there were some gaps in the innovation infrastructure even back then, and we were given the task to help small to medium-sized enterprises move forward with research and development. And that's really our roots. But since then, we've taken a broader view of it, which is we're really in the business of helping create strong and thriving small to medium-sized enterprises who put innovation at the core of what they do. One of our keystone programs, Derek, that you mentioned, is our financial funding. And the way we work there is really on a case of, I call it sort of a force multiplier, in that if you are, as an innovative enterprise, willing to take a technology or a business risk, we've expanded the definition and the scope of the risks that we help with. But we're really looking for companies who want to stretch the envelope in pursuit of a business outcome. So, and of course, we're looking for more jobs, more profits, more sales, all of those kinds of things that make for a stronger community. But if you're in the business of stretching the envelope to try to do that, we have financial supports for you. In terms of total size, we are considerably smaller than the SR&ED program. Just going by memory, last year we deployed about $500 million of funding to support small to medium-sized enterprises. So we work as a complement to the SR&ED program. We will work alongside. I know one of the questions will be, can I get both? And the answer is yes, you can, to within some reasonable limits, like, not more than 100% of the eligible expenses, those kinds of things. But fundamentally, we're here about trying to create stronger, bigger, faster growing, small and medium-sized innovative enterprises.
Well, that's excellent. And that $500 million, is that Canada-wide, all of Canada?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's there's about 250 of us ITAs across the country, and I know people are already doing the arithmetic between the number and the number. And that's actually not too far off in terms of the kind of funding that each of us have to deploy on an individual basis.
And how many, you said ITA, right? Or no, that's ITA?
ITA, Industrial
How-
Technology Advisor, yes.
Okay, sorry. How many are boots on the ground based in Alberta?
There are approximately about 30, give or
Wow.
take a bit. We have 15 in each of the 2 large cities, and we have some other ITAs distributed. There's one in Red Deer, one in Lethbridge. Last time I checked, we were looking for one for Grand Prairie. I don't know if we filled that gap, but we are fairly widely distributed across the province. And of course, thanks to technology now, we have access to expertise right across the country, live pretty much anytime we need it.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I love that. That's a really good presence. I'm a really, really strong proponent of, place-based, co-located staff when it comes to economic development. I think, being present, in the province where you live and work, I think goes a really long way to knowing the circumstances, getting to know the stakeholders, and being present. So yeah, that's great. Great to hear. There's 30 of you here. That's awesome. So Ferdinand, talk a little bit about your experience, accessing both SR&ED and NRC IRAP supports, and what it's done for your company.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do so. So just to give a little bit background information, until last year, our company was US based. And last year in August, we decided to move the company to Calgary, which was a significant lift. Everybody who is familiar with the lawyers and their pricing system, knows that it comes out a certain bill. But we did it for a good reason. We did it for the ecosystem and technology that exists in Alberta, Canada, and especially here in Calgary. And one very important part of that ecosystem are our grant systems, right? Are the grant bodies, of which IRAP is one of them. Then we have a whole series, SCTC, et cetera, and also SR&ED, right? In order to be competitive as a company our size, we're a scale up, about 50 people working all across the Americas. In order to be competitive with the big guns down in the South, we have to invest in innovation. We have to invest in projects that need de-risking through capital injections from other sources that really require very deep ties into the tech ecosystem from all sources possible. And one experience, and we just started working with IRAP about half a year ago. One thing that I particularly enjoy with IRAP is really this ability to leverage their network to tap into this ecosystem. So it's not just this financial piece. Of course, let's be honest, we're a small shop. We're constrained by capital constrained growth. So it's an important piece, but it's a lot more than that. It's really this connection into the tech ecosystem that they help us with and that they provide us. Let it be other grant bodies through grant stacking, which is very complex, et cetera, right? So that's one piece which I think is extremely important to really de-risk these innovation and R&D projects. Then on the SR&ED side, very, very similar. So obviously there's less of this like ecosystem component, but it's really the financial aspect, which is extremely important. Same thing again, right? We have to be top-notch, state-of-the-art. We have to develop technology that hasn't been out there in order to de-risk these innovations. Governmental help is extremely important and extremely successful also with driving innovation forward for a company our size.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much for that insight. As someone who has accessed these programs, and I'm going to ask a few more questions later on in terms of the good, that's a lot of the good, but I'm also going to talk about some of the challenges and how maybe some of these programs can be improved. So maybe keep that in the back of your head. But before we get there, both Curtis and Richard, what I also wanted to kind of know, and I think what companies would be really interested in, are some of the key parameters. As a funder at Prairie's Economic Development Canada, now at OSIF, everyone kind of has their lane, and something I hear from companies that it's really hard to know where to spend their time and what they could be eligible for. And we need to get better, I think, as funders or supports at triaging companies and really having quick no's and saying, yep, you're our sweet spot type of company that could be that could access these supports. So maybe a little bit about the key parameters of SR&ED and supports in NRC IRAP, and kind of what type of company do you think would really be able to take advantage of your supports? Let's start with Curtis.
Okay, I was gonna say usually they go IRAP first, but I'm happy to jump in here because this is anyone, if by chance someone listening has ever chatted with me before, I always say getting proactive, but helping people understand just that, Derek. The worst case scenario from a 15-minute conversation is it might be, don't worry about SR&ED and don't think about it for the next 18 months, and that's still a net positive for a founder or a CEO to say, okay, I'm not missing out on something here. So I think the key things in our space are really actually, first, are you spending? So for many folks in this stage, are you actually spending meaningful dollars on your technology, your science? Do you have engineers, or are you still in that early equity, everyone's working for free stage? So is there meaningful spending? If the answer is yes, then let's talk about the technology. And really the biggest thing there is you don't have to be sending a rocket to Mars. I was just looking at the data we have, 21,000 filings last year in the CRA fiscal for SR&ED. So 21,000 companies, they are advancing a technology, advancing a field. So are you doing something innovative, moving the ball forward? I always use the analogy of, you can imagine your little space, your little area industry that you're in. Are you nudging the ball forward and moving the competitive landscape forward? If the answer is yes, we're spending, and yes, we're moving things forward and advancing, then it's worth the conversation. So those would be the key, easiest things to try and remember at the highest level, to say yes, then it's worth a conversation to determine if there's benefit.
That's great. And so just to have that initial conversation, how do you triage internally, those conversations with companies? Like, do you take them all yourself, or you have a team? Are you, how do they contact you? Yeah.
1,000,000%. Yeah. Myself, that's my primary role, but yeah,
Okay,
we also then do have other folks, like depending on the business and the needs. Often there's our tax advisors, our CPAs, who can add a ton of value in understanding that side of, or one of our, PhD, Peng technical advisors who can help understand the eligibility. So most are just a generic, hey, we heard about this, should we be curious? And that's probably where I fall in. Others come with really specific needs and questions where, because of the way we're structured, we have that tax expertise as well as the technical expertise to have those specific conversations as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And so, Richard, what type of companies should be knocking on your door?
Well, just about every small to medium-sized enterprise who puts innovation at the core of what they do is kind of our starting point. Most people, when I say those terms, they think of startup, and that is, we see an awful lot of startups per se, but we also see a significant number of more traditional enterprises that are manufacturing firms or recycling. There's all kinds of traditional industries out there. If they've decided that the way to grow their business is by through the route of innovation or using an innovative strategy, then they should absolutely reach out to us. In terms of qualifications, it's actually quite short. You need to have a Canadian company. You need to have a Canadian corporate entity of some kind. And basically, you need to have some substance to it, in the sense of, if you have a corporate shell and there's nobody in it, there are no employees who haven't got any scientists or whatever, there's some more work that I think you need to do before we can really engage. But we work on a project basis. So we look for, if you're building your first prototype or whatever it is, scientific, technical challenge that you're looking to do, you're looking to overcome something that then becomes a project. And then we work with you to figure out what that project is, and then if it's appropriate, we can help you with financial support. But kind of like what Curtis says, financial support also requires some financial means. So you need to be able to have enough cash to keep the company moving forward and make it liquid. We don't provide cash in advance of expenses. We provide cash support for expenses that have already been incurred. So we're kind of looking for that kind of minimum requirement. And then we're just looking for the chances for generating those things that we're looking for as a community, those good jobs, those good sales profits, etc., going forward. One of the things we actually don't have, and I'll just turn it back to you quickly here, is we don't have a formal application process. You get in touch with our call center. I'll provide the phone number if you need it. And we go through an initial triaging with the people there who can also help you quite a bit. They're well connected with the rest of the ecosystem. But if there's something like, for example, in the case of Ferdinand, obviously there is something that we could help with, and then you get connected with an ITA. And all you have to do is just tell your story. What are you doing? Where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's the beginning point of an engagement with IRAP.
Awesome. No, that's great. Very sounds, I think for some companies, it seems a bit scary, right? To access some of these supports and daunting and potentially, bureaucratic and there's all these, I think misconceptions out there. But, at the end of the day, I think, these programs are quite accessible and we're trying to, streamline them and be more, public facing and so forth. So that being said, Ferdinand, I'd love to kind of hear your, tips for companies because you've been, quite successful as a company and accessing some of these supports. So, what are some of the, we can go on the websites, right, and read, programs parameters and who's eligible and here's the steps. But I always say, when a Prairies Canada, OSIF, I hate to call them, the unwritten rules. It's less the unwritten rules, but it's more like what exactly, the funder or the agency's really looking for. What are they really prioritizing? Because on websites, it can encompass so many different things at any given time. Those are constantly changing. Websites maybe aren't keeping up to speed there. So, priorities are shifting all the time. So, what are some tips that you found would be really kind of helpful for other companies that would be in your spot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting one. It's a loaded question too, because so when it comes to, let me take this as a two-parter, one's for IRAP and the other one for SR&ED, because I think for me personally, they are two very different buckets. They're very different to work with. And on the IRAP side, so let me be honest, with IRAP, I have made only positive experiences so far. We have a few grant bodies in Canada. They provide fabulous funding opportunities, but they're very difficult to work with. It's very bureaucratic, very technocratic. It's very difficult to actually get to a real person to speak about exactly these points. That is very different for IRAP. We have
let's name names. Like, what are some of those programs?
I got to be careful. I have a few applications.
I'm through with this. Keep going, Ferdinand. I'm loving this.
I was gonna say Richard's work is done. He's like,
I have a few applications in the pipeline out there right now. So let's talk in half a year again. So no, seriously. So on the IRAP side, so initially we reached out to Mark Pawlowski, and then he referred me to Wayne Kushnerick here in Calgary to just bring up a few names because Wayne has been absolutely stellar working with us, guiding us through the process. IRAP has been always fascinated me as an organization who's truly interested in helping us and making things work, right? That is something that, I see with other organizations as well, but they just have this touch and feel, which is really, it's extremely helpful for an organization because, we have a lot of grant opportunities, but it's a jungle. It's very difficult to really find your way through that, to determine which body is the best one at which technological readiness level and all that. And then you can stack them, which makes it even more complex, which is, it's beautiful, but it's also very complex. So I think what I would recommend is reach out to an ITA. The ITAs have great interest and have great motivation to help you. And they're a good entry point into the whole ecosystem. They're not stopping at IRAP. They can tell you, what, there's other grants opportunities out there. Why don't you reach out to them? They can't do that for you. Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's sort of the setup. But they can tell you, listen, have you reached out to the Alberta Innovates? Have you reached out to this and that, right? So they can help you navigate that jungle, which is a tremendously helpful thing that they can bring to the table, right? So my recommendation is really reach out to IRAP. They're a great starting point, not just for IRAP, but also for the whole grant system itself. And on the SR&ED side, And I'm not saying this only because Richard is here. That's truly my opinion. I have made really good experience there. On the SR&ED side, I'm not an accountant. For me, a lot of the financing side is a little bit overwhelming. You have an internal controller who works with that, but we have been leveraging Copoint's services for that piece, and that has been very successful. We will continue to leverage that relationship because there's just a lot that has to happen on that side. I'm pretty sure you can probably manage this internally in-house as well to some degree. I would rather have my finance team to focus on other things than working through extensive SR&ED applications, etc., etc. So leveraging a external resource to help you navigate that and actually go through the process in preparing all these claims and statements, that is something that I would recommend, right? Then on the internal side, there's a lot more, but I want to hand it back to you, Derek. Otherwise, I could go on forever here.
No, I want to add to that, Ferdinand, because removing the bias that I clearly have. Maybe with IRAP, it's talking to those folks to understand the grant system. I get the question so often: where do I start? Like, where do I even go to look for this information? And I would say, SR&ED's a bigger program. There's consultants, there's accountants, and maybe removing some of the. If my colleagues are listening, it's still go talk to other folks, talk to some experts in your network and get some advice. So that same thing, it can feel confusing and overwhelming, and who can help me? Well, not every service provider or not every grant is the right fit for your business. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but trust the network that you have, or if you don't, find some advisors and get an understanding, because there's not a Swiss Army knife solution out there. I don't think for either. So that was well said, Ferdinand.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much. So I just wanted to kind of pull on the thread, Ferdinand, around, where you alluded to the fact that there are, certain programs that are quite burdensome and, bureaucratic and so forth. We don't need to name names. I was just joking there, but more about and I'm going to turn it over to Curtis and Richard and have them talk about, how they see, NRC IRAP and SR&ED improving as well. I'm all about continuous improvement. I really like to hear this stuff as to how we can improve, because at the end of the day, it's all about getting support, funding in the hands of entrepreneurs quickly and efficiently at the end of the day, so they can be entrepreneurs. And so I would like to hear kind of some of the not so good experiences, Ferdinand, that you've seen or heard of as well.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a little difficult because I'm biased, obviously, from my side, right? So what I see often is, and maybe that's also a little bit the political situation right now, because STTC was put on hold for quite a while. SED was put on hold. That's a $1 billion fund or something in that range. That, from my perception, put a lot of strain on the other funding programs, from CRIN to ERA to Alberta Innovates, etc. Right? So a lot of people got redirected, and STTC has been a huge factor for innovation, as like a de-risk sort of contributor for innovation in Canada. Taking that off the plate sort of puts us a little bit in a unique situation right now, or has now. They're coming back online. So, but nevertheless, right? So I think what we are missing right now in Canada or in Alberta is a little bit some sort of like a centralized platform that you can reach into, that provides you with some sort of navigation tools to map out this whole channel, right? There are a few organizations, but actually not that many out there. I know in Calgary, for instance, 2 different ones, and we're working with one of them. They can help you navigate that. I just wish it was a little simpler, because for an organization smaller than us, it might be difficult to tap into that network and actually finance something like that too, right? So having like a centralized point where you know that, okay, this is our go-to location, website, whatever it is, right? Where that helps you navigate that, with even like sort of like a questionnaire or a survey that you can do online, where you go like, okay, at which stage are you? Do you have a new product line coming up? Where are you? Where are your people located? Are they in Calgary, Canada? Are they in the US, right? That really, for SR&ED, that's immediately an out, or a yes or a no, and also for IRAP. So that helps you navigate that. That is something that I'm missing. While I really appreciate the funding opportunities in Canada, I personally feel still quite overwhelmed with the opportunities that we have and navigate the whole jungle.
So there actually is a pretty good website in the federal government. It's called innovation.canada.ca. And,
Mhm.
you know, sometimes it is an awareness. Yes. So there is like a questionnaire and a form you could fill out, and then it kind of spits out, okay, these are the, you know, programs that you could be eligible for. It doesn't kind of go much farther than that, but I think it's a pretty good starting point. Have you heard of
Yeah.
that one? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may say, I think it can be improved.
Yeah, I bet.
There's room. There's room for.
Continuous
There's an
improvement.
opportunity for growth and improvement there. I think it's a starting point. I just think still, even having people there that they can direct you a little bit. When once you actually start talking to the grant bodies and you have somebody there like an ITA, they will be able to navigate that system with you. They can point you to the right resource. So again, that's a huge value proposition that I think often is not really recognized by companies themselves. Maybe they could do even like just publicize that a little bit better, that they can really provide you with that assistance, because this is really, I believe, one of the main factors why not enough companies, from my perspective at least, tap into these different networks. They feel overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start.
Exactly. I think I mentioned that as well, that it is overwhelming and a bit scary for a company, and because time is so limited. And that's why I think, you know, continuous improvement, making user friendly and bringing, you know, human beings behind these programs to the forefront is so important. Thanks so much for that contribution. Richard, so how do you think NRC IRAP can work on continuous improvement internally with its stuff? I know there's a lot of changes at NRC IRAP. So I think SDTC is now going to be under the purview of NRC IRAP. There's the Canada Innovation Corporation that's been talked about the last couple of years, but more so about, you know, some of that, you know, continuous improvement that you see can be done.
Well, yeah. First of all, let me just echo what Ferdinand's been saying. As an entrepreneur, I faced exactly the same challenges. Now that I'm on the other side of the table, I have a little more understanding and, shall I say, compassion for it. And let me just speak to that briefly, because I think it is important for the entrepreneurs out there to understand what is happening from the funding side, which is we are all trying to provide all of the best supports we possibly can to our innovative community. To do so, however, we've got some very intricate challenges that we need to navigate. Everything from, you know, the World Trade Organization and all of its requirements, what constitutes legitimate and otherwise supports, to not crowding out the private sector, to there's a bunch of things that need to go into any kind of funding that we apply or offer, or any other kinds of services. There's an awful lot of considerations that have to be taken into account before our entrepreneurs even know about them. And so that makes it kind of a tricky environment to begin with. But then we continue to innovate and provide new things. And like the innovate.canada website is awesome. I can tell you that it's probably always, at least, if not a few minutes, a few hours or a few weeks or more out of date, and that there are new programs coming all the time. And they all have new tweaks, and they have this and they have that. So it's a bit of a holy grail that we're continuing to work at, that, you know, how do we, to your point, Derek and Ferdinand, minimize the effort of the entrepreneurs to get access to it? And equally importantly, how do we make that access as easy as possible? One of the things we try to do with IRAP is, as I said, tell us your story. Our job is to try and align the programs with where the company's going and try to make that seamless. We're fortunate in that our programs are relatively easy to align just by their nature. Other funders don't have that situation, and that in many cases they're trying to achieve goals that, you know, can be a little bit different from what the entrepreneurs are. And so we've got all kinds of things to navigate there. So unfortunately, until we come up with some sort of magical AI thing that knows all things at all times and knows all things about your company too, and then can make a match, I think we'll probably be talking about this at the next scale up, Derek. So just kind of letting you know. Hopefully we can, but in terms of what can IRAP do, well, it's very interesting. There's as you can imagine, we have these conversations going all the time. And of course, the first thing is our entrepreneurs are always telling us they want more money. And we go, duly noted. You know, not the first time we've heard that, but one of the things I can share with, and you could see this information out there, is that as we know, the attrition rate with startups is very, very high. Depending on who you talk to, you know, it could be, your success rate could be as low as 1 in 5, maybe 2 in 5. The point is, there's a lot that do not make it. And we're focused on two questions. One is, can we help more of those who don't make it actually make it? Our initial analysis says that, yeah, they might have run out of funds, but some other things happened before they ran out of funds. There were some decisions that were made, some choices, you know, forks taken, roads taken, that unfortunately have resulted in this. So we're always thinking about ways, can we influence? We are not the entrepreneurs. And they have to make the decisions for themselves and live with the consequences, good or otherwise. But, you know, can we increase their chance of success? So we're spending a lot of time thinking about those kinds of things as we try to digest SDTC, which, by the way, is you know, that's a big program, and we're working pretty hard trying to make it all fit together with what we're already doing.
Derek, do you mind if I just add to this
Go ahead.
thought here? So
makes my job easy. Just jump in.
So absolutely, yeah. So I was just thinking while Richard talked about these different pieces about IRAP there. So one aspect that I think is under leveraged right now with all those grant bodies, because they have one thing in common, and that's huge for a company, especially our size or even smaller, but even larger companies like Calcim and so on that are a lot more front and center, is around the go-to-market and marketing side. All these organizations are extremely well connected, right? Because they work with hundreds of different organizations. Now, if you think about a company a bit like 50, 20, or even maybe 100 people, a lot of these companies are relatively young, but their market in Canada could be very, very large. So I think when it comes to really message amplification, we are currently utilizing the strength that our ecosystem in the form of these different grant bodies actually has. So really, right, so they know the companies, they know what kind of innovation we have. They speak to potentially also consumers and interested parties. They have the connection. So I'm wondering, you know, how can we sort of leverage this ecosystem, and as you know, as really as the vortex being these different grant bodies like IRAP better, so that we get the message out, because they will talk to potential clients, they will speak to different other organizations. So this message amplification piece, I think, is something that with the current system that we have in place, we could build out and really strengthen our entire economy by doing that a lot more than we currently do.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. There was a speaker yesterday who really talked about, you know, amplification of messages, communicating better, we do hear that a lot in that we aren't telling our story enough. And so I think that that's really, really important. I'm going to pull on a thread there, but before I do, I would love to turn over to Curtis, because I know that there's a lot of discussions right now. I think SR&ED is actually undergoing a review. Yep. I went to a roundtable a few weeks ago that was put on by the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. You probably should have been there. And that talked about really in this review that the government is doing, what should they be keeping in mind, and how you think SR&ED could be reviewed. It's such a massive opportunity, and so this is a good opportunity to really kind of improve it.
Yeah, I think that a great question. That was where I was going to go, Derek. In trying to answer, I know they're doing the review. It seems to be a consensus around expanding some of the eligibility. You know, for getting into the weeds a little bit, be quite punitive just to have taken foreign investment or to not be the right corporate structure, but yet everyone's still Canadian employees. The IP is being developed in Canada, and you just don't get the same benefit as a small business. So that's, I think, one area that they've really they're focusing on, and hopefully, it's such a big program, so well established. I guess the reality is no one's expecting a drastic change, even if it is needed. I don't know that it's needed. I'm with you on the continuous improvement. One area that I hear a lot from folks, and it's something that is probably hard to change, is just getting the funds out faster. You know, there's a number of folks that rely on SR&ED. They're in this, if we want to define it as scale up, but maybe after yesterday's chat with Daniel, we're not supposed to call a growing company. it becomes reliant and it's cash flow, and they can go fast and innovate, but it can really, the brakes can get pumped really fast. All of a sudden there's a review because of the rigor involved, and then all of a sudden you're waiting 12 months for your funds, and that can really kill some of the speed. So is there a way to distribute these funds faster? And there probably is a way. There are ways right now. There's third-party vehicles you can do that, but is there a way to validate? Maybe, you know, Richard, you said AI, maybe there's something there. Although you've all said yesterday that hey, it's all making us dumber. ChatGPT is making us dumber. I'd love to chat with you all from Zazie a bit more about that idea. But those, I think, are the key things, to your point, those changes, and hopefully there's some meaningful change to listen to the entrepreneurs first and foremost, the folks taking advantage, the Ferdinands of the world. How can this program be better and help you grow the company faster while remaining, you know, maintaining the rigor and the compliance, so it doesn't become pivot a little bit. And Lauren asked a question, one of our guests here, about are there other ecosystems that do this better internationally? So I don't have any experience outside of the US. So maybe for Ferdinand or Richard, are there other areas that do this kind of ecosystem shared information for funding better than us? That's a question I'll pose. But I do know, comparing these programs, like looking at the US, having worked in the US in the R&D tax credit space, it's a very different program, and I don't know that it's better. It's faster, it's easier, but it's very little money. Turns into a lot of, you know, fraud's a big word. It's not fraud, but a lot of like, whatever, send in the slip and maybe we'll get a few shekels back, which, and you get into what is the ideals of the cultures of the US ecosystem versus Canada. So I think that's an interesting conversation for a different panel. But anyways, so I'll pose that from the chat, if there's other ecosystems that maybe do a better job of sharing information in a simple way. I know my experience in the US would be that they don't really share anything. They just go fast. Go fast, spend money, and do it again.
Where do you see? I actually don't see the questions in the chat.
Sorry, I think I might have answered it and then it disappeared. So
okay.
And I answered it by saying I'll bring it up and make sure we look at it. So talking about that, you know, Ferdinand, you're talking about this, like these shared areas of how do I access? Is there one spot? If anyone knows of any other jurisdictions that have done it well, or maybe a model for how to do it better?
I'm not so sure. You know, for us, there's a reason why we moved the company from the US to Canada, and as I mentioned initially, that is one of them. In the US, yeah, you have grants and you have similar ecosystems, but remember, there's also significantly more competition, right? Yeah. It's a very, very different market, and their funding strategies are also different. In some parts, it's a little bit less bureaucratic. That is true, but the actual funding success rate is a lot lower. Then, if I look at European countries, I've worked in various European countries with. Outside of Switzerland, which has a very good system around that, from my experience, Germany or Austria are a lot more bureaucratic than we are in Canada. So I'm not sure if I would necessarily take them as models either. They have good investments and different sort of financial vehicles from the government to help growing companies. I just don't see the same funding amounts there. I don't see it as being as straightforward as in our case it is. And yeah, there's bureaucracy involved in Canada for sure. But, you know, to be honest, I mean, if you ask a VC or a private equity investor to give you $5 million, then they will also ask a few questions. That's not just gonna come your way, right? So they have to do their financial diligence as well. So I don't see it as a significant burden because yeah, you know, frankly, it's a lot of money involved here, and it's taxpayer money. I'd rather have it as being a taxpayer. I want to have some solid, you know, investigation around whether that's actually justified or not around that. So I'm not sure if I see it really as a negative. I personally feel we're in a pretty good sweet spot in Canada, but others may see that differently, of course.
Yeah. That's very interesting. So yeah, I see that we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd encourage anyone tuning in to ask any questions here for the last 10 minutes. I'll keep an eye on the chat. I do see now that the question about, is there another jurisdiction that does ecosystem navigation well for startup and scaling entrepreneurs? I actually think Calgary as a case study. So we have the Platform Innovation Center that is your one-stop shop. If you are an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, if you're talent looking to get into the tech ecosystem, just go to Platform Innovation Center. There's I don't know what they're up to now, anywhere between 100 and 150 partners have space or are collaborating at the Platform Innovation Center. So it's really a go-to spot. But I always actually say that we need a digital version of that ecosystem navigation. I know there's a lot of different maps out there, some that are sector specific. So there's, the clean tech ecosystem map, there's, life sciences and so forth, but we do need a one-stop shop digitally that really kind of provides that pathfinding for entrepreneurs. 100% agree that that is a gap in the ecosystem. So, with 9 minutes left, I think, we talked a lot about these programs, how to access them, what you provide, what's some of, the continuous improvement that we can look at. Something, let's leave it on a little bit more of a positive note. I think, if you are a company and you're looking to access, you kind of want to see, and it kind of gets to your point, Ferdinand, about, amplifying success. And that's what we heard yesterday from, what was his name again? Eisenberg, his last name. What a great talk.
Eisenberg, yeah.
Daniel Eisenberg. I took so much away from that. And he really focused on the fact that we need to amplify success, because once companies and entrepreneurs see that success, and others who maybe aren't located here want to jump in. And so I'd really encourage, Curtis, Richard, Ferdinand, you're a success story, so maybe you could sit this one out, or if you know another company that has a success story. But I really kind of want Curtis and Richard, like, what, on a Friday night, you were like, man, that was such a good win. I'm so happy for that company. Knocked it out of the park. What are some, real success stories that you could think of? I'll turn it whoever's ready.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in, because I've got I can't name the business we're in. We don't name the companies, but certainly a specific example, and a non-traditional. So there's these folks that fit the SR&ED or SR&ED narrative. We're the SpaceX of this. So yeah, clearly there's going to be eligibility. Non-traditional, have a conversation, pursue a little bit, because it's, we're not interested, and maybe there's and then through a process discovering eligibility in what they do, is just feeling like, this is what we do. This is our bit. We're just builders. We're innovators. We don't need tax credits anyways, and getting through that process, and in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of, call it, found capital for this business. And now all of a sudden it's a part of their planning, it's part of their budgeting. They're able to do, Ferdinand, you use the word kind of risk, like de-risking. It's a huge part of their planning. Now we know we can anticipate these funds, when we're going to get them. We can spend more, we can hire more engineers to work on these problems, and really actually accelerate the business so much faster than they ever thought they could. Taking what was really just what they thought, we're engineers, we build stuff, we innovate, and finding, meaningful amounts of cash. And I always say the SR&ED program, it's an entitlement. So it's worth a conversation. It's not getting those funds is the equivalent of telling, tax season personally, like, keep my RSP benefit. I don't need it. Whoever's in charge, I won't pick on Current. Whoever's in charge, you need it more than I do. It is literally, it's in the tax law. You're entitled to these funds. So those are really, and I'll speak on behalf of the whole team, when we can help those companies do that and find that, it's so fulfilling in a way to be able to just be a small part of their story, but really fulfilling, and it keeps you motivated to keep working on the dark days, I guess.
I bet what motivation, right? To help these companies access money that they could potentially be leaving on the table. And so, and we, want to bring that, wearing my Calgary and Alberta hat, I really want that to come here too, into the hands of entrepreneurs here. So love it. Thank you so much for that. Richard.
Oh, do you want me to talk about my favorite companies? Because we'll be here for a lot more than 10 minutes.
Yay, I love it.
So
Couple successes, yeah.
Oh, well, I'm afraid that if I name two, I'm going to get phone calls from another, who knows, saying, Richard, what? I thought I was your favorite. And of course, honestly, I tell them all I am, because they are. But if I step back and I'm kind of, I think I've got more gray hair than pretty much anybody else on this panel. So I'm just going to add a little bit of a historical perspective. When I was an entrepreneur when I was at the BAM Venture Forum a few years ago, I remember what it's like. The whole ecosystem has moved so far forward in the last 10 years. And not only just the ecosystem, you mentioned Platform Calgary. I used to know it as the Calgary Research and Development Authority. So there we go. Now I've dated myself. But the point is that there used to be a tiny little chunk of what is now the Alistair Ross Center. And they had wet labs there, and they were stuck out on the edge of campus, and the C train didn't even go by. I look at what we have now, and I also look at the quality of the entrepreneurs when they first walk in my door in terms of what they know, what they're capable of. It's such a huge step forward. So I think all of the continuous improvement, absolutely, we need to be doing that. But I think it's really important to recognize the progress we've made. Now, most people, of course, don't have the memory that I do, so they don't see that, and don't worry about it. But it is important to remember, I think, the progress that we have made. If I could make one magic wish, I would wish that we as Canadians would be a little bit less Canadian and be a little bit more risk-taking as customers. That, I don't know about you, Ferdinand, but certainly my experience with Canadians is they're awesome people. No other place I'd rather live. But if you could be a little bit more risk-taking in terms of innovating with products and services, boy, would our clients really benefit from that. Not silly innovative, but we often find the situation that the Canadians sometimes are the last people to buy some of the products that these innovative companies are making. So, but don't stop being Canadian, because that's awesome. It's just that little bit I really wish we could get. So anyway, back to you, Derek. Hope that's helpful.
That's super, super helpful. And it's something we heard yesterday on your last point around, taking risks. I mean, we hear that all the time as funders, as government funders, we need to take more risk. Of course, we're hearing, as we heard yesterday in the talk, adopters need to take more risks and be first at the table. That's clearly a gap. Corporates are not in the, Calgary and Alberta ecosystem as we hope they would be. And so absolutely, I think those are some excellent points. All right, so we got about 3 minutes, so 1 minute each. What's your number one piece of advice to a company to, hopefully summarize this all up? Like, if you were to say, this is what you need to do moving forward, all these changes come in, how can companies position themselves, and what should they really be focused on here in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? Curtis, 1 minute. Not even.
Yeah,
it's 1:28
yeah,
now.
I'll probably go less than a minute. For me, I'll be proactive. Be proactive and talk to an expert. So, I mean, whoever that is, someone you trust, and get proactive. So much of the benefit of SR&ED will maximize when you're proactive, when you've got an expert helping you in any capacity, whatever that is, on documentation, understanding. So just like most things in life, it's hard. Get proactive and have a 15-minute conversation tomorrow, even though it may not matter for another 18 months or 2 years.
I love it. I tell applicants all the time, I'm very transparent as to timing. I say, now's not the right time for XYZ reason, but I love having this early conversation because we're positioning ourselves when the timing is right. So I absolutely love that. Ferdinand.
Yeah, just sort of building up on what Curtis said there. I fully agree. And then leveraging a partner, especially on the SR&ED side, is very, very helpful. If you're a small or medium enterprise shop, then it might be difficult to sometimes work on these things. You might not have the in-house capacity or the financial skill set to do that, and whatever, right? So it's really helpful to leverage companies like Copoint or others here in Calgary to work with you. And then don't get too overwhelmed with the different grant bodies. Reach out to them.
Yeah.
They're people like you and me, and they want to help. They truly want to help. So reach out to them, have a conversation. If they can't help you directly, then almost all of them will point you into the right direction. Speak to this person over there at IRAP. Speak to this person over there at Alberta Innovates. They will make things happen. In the end, we are one ecosystem. They might work for the government, but they're good people. They want to help us. They want to help us all succeed, right? So high tides rise all ships. And I see that especially with IRAP. So reach out to them, find out if they're a fit for you and vice versa. And if not, ask them for referrals. Ask them, hey, do you know somebody over at Alberta Innovates who could help me with this? Or at Emissions Reduction Alberta, at STTC. We have all those folks here in town, right? So speak with them. Don't be too overwhelmed and just slowly navigate that channel through there. But really leverage those vehicles, because when you're a small shop, then having 100K more or less in your bank account can make all the difference for if you want to invest into this R&D product and eventually turn into a success story for Alberta and Canada or not. So it makes a big difference.
Love it. Yeah, I always say, talk to a human being. Don't talk to a website. Talk to a person. Relationships go a long way. Richard, last word with you. We're at 1:30, so quickly.
Okay. Well, I thought I might get cut off, so I stuck my message in the chat. But fundamentally, focus on customers. The reason that Ferdinand and his team has been so successful with IRAP is they're solving a problem that's worth solving. If there's one thing I would counsel all of my entrepreneurs, get your customers motivated and then come to us. It's so much easier, because otherwise you're solving a problem only for yourself, and that's a customer of one. So back to you, Derek.
Traction, solving problems. And that's what we're all about here in Calgary, are solving problems, in my opinion. So love it. Thank you so much. I wish we can talk, for hours, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your contributions today. Had a great time.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.
Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.